Like, for like 10 seconds. Okay, go. In this video, I will explore definitions of myths, fables, and folklore. I will also discuss the importance of using thematic fiction in your classroom. And lastly, I will discuss some ways that you can use thematic fiction in your classroom. Now, there are two theories of reading, or in my opinion, two kinds of readers and ways to teach reading. One way is to look at fiction stories simply as fiction. Looking at stories this way says that, quote, these characters are simply fictional characters in fictional worlds and have absolutely nothing to do with me and my life. These readers ignore patterns of fiction and how they are mirrors of reality. It is as if mythologies are just dead stories that we teach to children. Then there is the thematic reader and teacher, who sees the relationship texts and their authors have with them and with the world. These are the kind of people who listen to lyrics and say, wow, this is kind of like my life, or read poems and cry, because the words are just so beautifully accurate. Our goal as teachers is not to trivialize texts by making them fictional. We can talk about literal things like a plot or the words in the story and their definitions, but our goal is to teach texts thematically, since we have a lot to learn from fiction. In order for students to love reading, we must help them realize themes in how literature is one of many ways to understand life, society, and the idealistic structures we inhabit and create. Literature is flanked by two things, history and philosophy. When we talk about literature, we integrate words into both in order to simultaneously comprehend all three. Teachers can use myths, fables, and folklore to teach history. Such fiction is a cultural expression of universal symbols and beliefs. Myths, folklore, and fables are also symbolic of social values. Every day, we use sayings such as, "He is crying wolf again," or "Don't count your chickens before they hatch." These sayings come from thematic fiction, and it is important for children to understand what these sayings mean and where they come from. Archetypes and themes enable readers to see literary works as part of a larger cultural heritage. Fiction also explains cultural symbols and allows us to understand literature and the world in a rich and full way. Thematic fiction has a structure in which meaning is embedded. This predictable nature of plot fulfills children's expectations and thus allows children to understand the story. Thematic fiction is full of adventure, humor, and rich language that children also enjoy. These texts can help students recognize the universality of wishes, dreams, and problems of all people. These stories can be complex for readers as young as first grade, but they can be easily understood and enjoyed when read aloud, with expression and when discussed. One popular form of thematic fiction is Aesop's fables. These fables include animals who talk, act, and behave like people. Although the stories are about animals, these stories are really about people. Through these representations, these stories teach people how to act. Morals at the end of the story usually sum up the story's meaning. From these stories, we derive idioms or sayings which we use every day. For examples of fables and their morals and idioms, click on the other videos below. When reading aloud, stop and discuss interesting ideas, cultural differences, and the rich use of language in fables, myths, and folklores. This is one particular way to introduce descriptive vocabulary in your classroom, and for older children, figurative language in the forms of metaphors and similes. Since young children love the flow of the story, one strategy to use while using thematic fiction is to map the story and notice cause and effect relationships. Production and creation as a way to make meaning is a central part of the Common Core, and writing is a way for students to understand and own the material being taught. Students of all ages can participate in making descriptive word charts and walls, participating in readers' theater, or even creating their own myths and fables that reflect plot structures already used. The point is to get students to explore language in a meaningful, productive, and artistic way. When using thematic fiction, to understand another text, say, like the trickster figure in Mark Twain, be sure to introduce the thematic text first, then reintroduce it and discuss their varied appearances in literature. In this video, we have discussed the importance of thematic fiction in the classroom and some ways to use it. As thematic readers, we realize that there is something progressive about literature, something that speaks beyond the literal text, something bigger and something higher. In that same way, we want students to be able to read literature and see the same things we do. We want students to realize that fiction is not just about stories, but instead these stories are about dreams, wishes, and problems of all people around the world.